Okay, so an administrator command prompt gives you a lot more power. You can do things in the administrator command prompt. Also in Windows 10, you have these options over here. I don't know if anyone's looked at it yet. We have the PowerShell. What's the PowerShell? The PowerShell is even a more powerful command line interface that's used for programmatically changing different configuration items in your computer, interfacing with server applications like Microsoft Exchange and SQL Server and things like that, which require a whole different kind of command set than you can get with the with a regular command prompt, and that's why the PowerShell has become so popular, especially in Windows 10 Pro and on the server devices, because that's how you can actually manage your systems. You don't need a GUI, you can do it right from the PowerShell. But since this is Windows, we now have something in it called Ubuntu and OpenSUSE and Debian. And anyone know what these are? These are different flavors.
Another language?
These are different flavors of Linux.
Linux.
Linux. So you can now run Linux with a Windows plugin that allows you to run these 3 different flavors of Linux on your Windows computer. So they've tried to make it even more flexible than it was before. So there's actually a lot of power in all of these command lines right here. Okay? So what are these and which one doesn't belong? Anybody tell?
Lower left.
What is this here? This is a
Start menu.
tablet interface from what version of Windows? You have a start up here, and there's no start button on the bottom, so it's Windows 8, 8.0. Okay? There was no start button in Windows 8.0. What is this? It's Windows 10 with a nice little flower theme on it that comes by default in Windows.
So how do you get to that thing on Windows 10?
I'll show you.
Making those little,
I'll show you. Okay, and then you can, and then this one here is also Windows 10. And how do you know it's Windows 10? Because of this silly little start button on the bottom here. Now what's this over here? This Photoshop, but what application, what operating system is that? This is a Mac operating system. And even though Photoshop will look exactly the same here on a Windows PC, the way you know this one is a Mac is because of these shortcuts here. Mm-hmm. You've probably never seen this one before on a Windows PC, but that's the Mac control button, the Mac button, that's the Mac key, the Apple key, it's called. Okay, so this would be the same thing as pressing like Control N on a Windows machine. Instead it's Command N on a Mac machine. Okay. Now what are these? So here we have a Mac desktop. So I don't expect everyone to know that if you may have never seen that before. This is an Android tablet. How do we know it's an Android? Well, it has a Play Store on it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so and I know you can't see that from where you're sitting, but there's a Play Store in the upper left-hand corner here. What is this device here? Yeah, it's a phone,
Android.
Right? Yeah, how do you know it's an Android?
Got the buttons at the bottom.
Exactly, yeah, you got the buttons on the bottom. I think there's also a store on here too.
But Apple has the button on the bottom too.
No, these are different. These are the same buttons you'd see on an Android. You'd see a home button on an Apple. Okay. Now this is an Apple here, but there's no button down here. Where'd that button go?
That's a newer Apple too.
Yeah, it's a newer Apple, and so it has a software button. So if you want, so this is a 10 or an X, you know. So if you want to get the home button, you slide from here to the middle of the screen, and that acts just like the home button. So you get a lot more real estate on an Apple phone now, and also the newer Apple iPads. You do have a lot more real estate to work with. I put this up for Jim. He loves his Linux Mint, and I use it too. It's a pretty good operating system. If you're looking for something, if you have an older machine and you have still want to use it, especially a laptop you want to keep carrying around with you, Linux Mint is really pretty easy to do and not that difficult to manage with a little bit of help. But you will need a little bit of help. the thing that's so cool about Linux Mint and other Linux distributions is that there's a very live and active user community online that you'll either already find the answer or they'll be able to help you answer any question that you have. Sometimes nicely, sometimes not so nice. So, we have all these different things on our Windows computers that we can manage. So these are management interfaces, okay? Because remember, we're still talking about interfaces. So what's an interface? An interface connects you as the person, as the user, or software to the actual computer hardware itself and allows it to do things. So this is the user interface for managing your devices. So it's your device manager for managing your interfaces. Because what kind of things do we have on here? We have audio inputs and outputs. The whole audio is kind of an interface, isn't it, between our human ear and the computer itself. And we have batteries. Well, that's how you get power to your systems when they're not plugged in. So that's kind of a power interface, isn't it? How about, let's skip to computer. Disk drives are for storage, so that connects your storage to your computer. You have displays. Well, displays are kind of a no-brainer because you want to be able to see what you're doing. It's real hard to do computers by Braille, although it can be done. You can work a computer without a keyboard and without a mouse and without a monitor. You should use punch cards. Remember the punch cards in the big computers? Well, that's a kind of an interface between the human programmer and the computer itself. So that's an interface that you can use. So we can look at imaging devices and keyboards and mice and monitors and network adapters and print queues and printers. What's the difference between a printer and a print queue?
The queue is waiting to be printed.
Right, so it's some kind of storage somewhere that's holding information to be printed by the printer. And remember we said last week that the printer was not only the device that does the printing itself, but it's also the driver's software that connects the programs to that actual physical device. So it's sort of an interface between you clicking the print button and the printer actually printing something. So that's what the printer driver does. Processors. What's a processor? Well, that's your CPU. That's your central processing unit. That's what actually carries out the instructions that are being sent to your computer. Secure biometric devices. What's an example of that? Something that maybe reads your iris or can check your fingerprint or something like that. So these are all different types of interfaces. We have, and then here we have our universal serial bus controllers again. So there's really so this is, the device manager is a manager that controls your interfaces, basically on your system. The file manager is basically the interface that controls how you see your files as they're stored on the hard drive or the USB drive or whatever storage device you have. It could be OneDrive, it could be another Google Drive, okay? The file manager is the interface that allows you as a human being to make sense and see what's actually being connected to by your system. Disk and partition management. How many people have actually looked at this thing? Okay. See, I look at it just about every day, so it's kind of strange to me that everyone else doesn't do it too. But, you know, it's become kind of a habit. And if you really want to become a computer-powered user, you need to develop computer habits where you do things on a regular basis and try things. But the disk and partition manager is basically how your drives interface with how are they set up and how do they work on your computer. So this computer here would have a C drive on it, okay? That's 273.6 gigabytes, and the formatting of the disk is NTFS. Anyone remember what NTFS stands for?
National,
New Technology File System, which is the standard file system on all Windows computers. Okay, and why is it the standard file system on all Windows computers? Because Microsoft said so. No, because it's a fairly strong operating system that handles networking, and it also handles what we call journaling. Remember we talked about journaling? What is journaling?
What is
well,
Journaling. Journaling is keeping a record, basically, of what's been written where and when and how, for what reason, in case you need to recover. Okay? So if you have a file system that's journaled, you can recover your work if you lose it. Whereas with the old FAT file tables and things like that, everyone remember FAT? What does FAT stand for? File Allocation Table. If you lost a FAT drive, unless you had a backup on another drive, there's no way you can get it back. There's no journaling. There's no record of what was on there. So your operating system really doesn't have a clue. Okay? So NTFS is a file system that is journaled that will give you a lot of recovery options, whereas the old FAT file system will not do that. Now, what is the file system that's kind of universal between Apple devices and IBM personal computers and things like that? Does anybody know what that
EX?
file? It's going to be FAT32.
EX32?
No, FAT32.
Yeah.
Yeah. The FAT32 EX extended FAT will not work on an Apple computer, whereas FAT32 is recognized on a Mac and other computers for transferring data back and forth. Especially since Macs became users of the Intel processors, things have actually gotten a lot more similar than they've gotten different. So the disk and partition management is our interface between what we see as humans and what's actually how the disk has been partitioned into pieces, so we can use it as a logical tool when we are storing data on our computers. Come on, mouse. Okay, so most people now should be familiar with this. So this is the Windows setting page. Where do you find the Windows settings? The Windows
Start button.
Yeah, you can either hit. I can't show you. I need to extend my. During the next break, I'll extend my taskbar up to the top here.
Well, it's just they go to the settings.
Yeah, you go to the settings icon, and the settings icon looks like a little gear, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, or else you can do Windows key I should take you there as well. So this is the actual real settings on my computer here, and that was brought up with Windows key and I as a shortcut. But this is where you can go and do things like, if you were to go to themes, Themes, okay, themes and related settings. You can change your theme here to a high contrast theme. So this is where you can choose the different themes. Here's where you can get your little flower theme right here. Here's where you can get the little beach theme with 5 images, 6 images, which will rotate after a specified amount of time that you can specify. Or we can just get the plain old Windows image, or we can get a synced image that we have on the internet. We might have in our roving profile on the Microsoft network. But I think one of the cool things on here is the desktop icon settings. Okay. So sometime in the past, like with Windows XP and things like that, you always got My Computer, which is basically the same as this PC. You always got the recycle bin, okay, and you used to get in the bottom right-hand corner, you used to get a network icon, and you can always put this on your page if you wanted. But you can add or remove these from your home page just by clicking this button here. If I turn this off, my computer icon goes away from my screen here. If I click it again, it brings it back. And when I say, okay, the settings take place, they actually occur. But the themes is a really good place to change your mouse cursor size and things like that. You can, of course, I moved it up to the other screen here. But I can either go to this page here, and of course I can go to my pointers here and I can choose different pointers in this list here that I want. There's all kinds of different schemes and things that you can pick out and use on your computer. Some people don't like the large or the system scheme because it's too small, so they'll go to the extra large scheme, which will make the mouse quite a bit larger than the default scheme. And this is the system scheme, or else some people might want a white mouse instead of a black mouse, so they go to the default extra large, and you can choose the thing that you want. But there's actually something new in here. If you go back to the home button here, and you put in pointer, change mouse pointer size, there's actually a new thing here where you can just slide this in and it'll make it bigger, or it'll make it smaller, and you can change the color, or you can make it, you can give it a rainbow color, you can choose the color you want. So it's just another one of those things that has come about in Windows 10. Now, in the beginning of Windows 10, the settings program was essentially just a veneer over the control panel, okay? It's getting to be more powerful now, and it's starting to get functions in it that you will not find in the control panel. So it's actually starting to come to its own in some of the later updates in Windows 10. But back in the beginning, it was just a veneer of the control panel. And we all actually have the control panel in one of my later slides, but what does the control panel do?
Controls
Like-
everything.
It's an index.
Exactly. It controls everything.
Pretty much.
No, it doesn't control everything. But most of the time, when you first start up your control panel, it starts up like this. And I've never liked this view here.
No.
I never liked this interface. So guess what? It's a computer. If I don't like it, I can change it, right? So if I click on here and I go by category and I choose small icons, I get a bunch of little tiny icons, okay? Now I'm getting a little older, maybe I want a little bigger icons, so I come up here and I change it to large icons. So where is that setting kept when I change it from small icons to large icons to categories?
Accessibility.
Settings.
The registry,
Oh,
okay? What's the database called on your computer that holds all your settings? The registry. Yeah, so just remember, the registry is a database that holds all the information that tells your computer how to work, or what it's done, or where it's been, or where it's going. So the registry is basically a repository of different settings that have been set on your computer, and it's also saves information like what are the last 10 files that you opened in this program. It will save that in the registry as well. So when you open up like Microsoft Word or something, you get those 10 recent, that's all kept in the registry, okay? So every time you make a change in any one of these different programs in the registry, where does it make the change?
registry.
In the registry, okay? So remember that the control panel and the settings application are now your user interface between you and the registry. And it's a heck of a lot easier. This, my friends, is the registry. It's nothing to be afraid of, as long as you never make any changes.
Yeah.
These are basically the different keys and these are the values that go along with them. And they can be, for the uninitiated, it can be quite confusing. But after you've used the registry for a while, you kind of learn what to do and what not to do. And if you're afraid of messing up the registry, what can you do in advance? Yeah, so how do you do a backup?
Restore point?
Yeah, you create a restore point and it will contain all your registry values. So if you want to feel brave and edit the registry, and I think you should, you want to create a restore point first. If there's something you want to do on your computer and you go to an article and it says make this change in the registry, chances are it's not going to affect anything negatively, and it will do exactly what you want it to do. So it's worth a try. But then again, just like anything else, you should have a backup copy of your registry before you do that. Okay? So we're not going to get into doing registry edits today, but as you can see, everything, and we talked about this before, everything on a computer is an object, right? Mm-hmm. And these are the type of objects we have. We have values and something called D-word, which is a type of number. It's a length of a certain length of a number. Here we have binary numbers, and they look different than D-words on them, which are hexagonal. And it can be really confusing, for the uninitiated. But for someone who works in this all the time, who's made it a habit, it's actually a very powerful tool that should not be avoided, because you can do a lot of stuff. But the most important thing to remember for this discussion is when you make any kind of change in the settings or in the control panel or in a way a Microsoft Word document is set up, where do all those changes get saved? In the registry. Yeah, so the registry is your common database.
How do you get to the registry from where you are? You go down to any place you can do a search, and you type in REGEDIT for regedit. And then it will say, are you sure you want to take a chance of destroying your whole computer in just one try? And you say, yes, of course I do, because I'm kind of dumb. And no, you just accept the fact that when you go into the registry, that if you change the boot parameters, you can actually keep your computer from booting. So you have to know basically what not to change, but you can change just about anything else. Seems to me that one should stay out of the registry.
No. No, it seems like one who doesn't have the confidence or hasn't done it on a regular basis, they should probably stay out of there. But it is a super powerful tool that allows you to do things and make changes that you cannot do from the outside. Okay, I would take a step and say that everything that you do in your computer, when you change something in the control panel or change any configuration setting, you are changing the registry, but you're not changing it from the registry edit tool. You're changing it from like the control panel or from the file settings, which are your interface to the registry, which is the database that controls all the settings and all the everything that needs to be kept in memory and things that needs to be loaded when your computer starts up. That's all information is kept in the registry. And the tools for you are settings and control panel. As you become more comfortable and have more needs, you will need to go into the registry editor, okay, to do those sort of things. Okay, so the registry editor would be an advanced user interface to change the way your computer behaves.
And then you put Bruce's phone number on speed dial.
You saw me working registry the other day. I mean, it's just, you have to do it in order to get certain things done. For example, we had a user come in here the other day whose computer wouldn't start up normally, and we couldn't get Windows Defender on it. And they had Avast, I think, was on it. It was an antivirus program, and it wouldn't let us remove it completely, so we couldn't get Windows Defender to work. So we actually had to go into the registry, and we had to remove the 2 files that were starting up when the computer started from a registry setting. And once we removed those files, we were able to remove them from the file system, and then we got Windows Defender working. So if we couldn't get into the registry and do it from this level, we would not have been able to fix that computer as easily as we were able to do. Okay?
Can you back up the registry just by itself?
You know, it used
There is a
to.
backup
Hmm?
on that menu up there, isn't there a backup?
I believe there is.
So you can save that one
Let's see,
and
file.
restore it.
Yeah, they're kind of removing
Where
the
do you back
backup.
up? Where is it backing
No,
up
they
to?
don't have a backup up here
Oh, they
anymore.
took it out of there.
Yeah, in earlier versions of Windows, like Windows 10, like 1703, every time you started your computer, it would make a backup copy of your registry. Now in 1903, it doesn't do it anymore. Okay, so and they did it to save space for the actual image, the ISO file, and things like that. So it no longer automatically backs up the registry. So if you're going to make changes to your registry, you want to set a restore point first.
So restore point is your backup? I mean,
Yeah, basically.
Right.
Basically, it's your backup. And does everyone know how to set a restore point?
No.
So I usually just go down into the search box and I type restore, and create a restore point pops up, and I get a little window that comes up here. Okay. So we're actually going to be talking about this window quite a bit, looking at some of the different tabs and things. But you want to make sure that the disk you want to have a backup for all the critical files on it, protection is turned on. And sometimes when you do an upgrade from one version of Windows to another, this gets turned off by the operating system, by the actual upgrade process. So you need to come into configure, and you need to turn on system protection again. And once you turn on system protection, you can change the size of your hard disk just that you want to preserve. You usually don't need to change this at all. But once that's set up and it says cancel, then you just come down here to create and you just give it a file name like today's date or my registry backup, whatever you want to call it, and you click create. And that gives you a backup of your registry and all critical files that are required for Windows to boot properly. Okay, for Windows to work properly. That's what a restore point does. A restore point does not back up your whole system. Okay, it just backs up those files that are critical for Windows to start up. Okay, so a restore point is not the same as a full system backup. A full system backup is either a file by file backup using the Windows 7 backup program, or the new program in Windows 10 is called File History, where you can back up all of your profile files. Or you can do a system image, which is a good thing to do because it basically takes a snapshot of your whole disk, and that way you can restore your whole disk back to where it was at that point in time. Program.
So
So where is that?
yeah.
So if we go back to our settings program, which we have somewhere in this mess. So we cancel out of here and cancel out of here and close the registry editor. And I think we want this open here. So we have settings in here, and this is not my active one, is it? If I go back to home here, and I type in backup, B-A-C-K-U-P, it gives me backup settings. And so this is where you set up file history, okay? So it's under the backup settings in the settings application. or the settings user interface, whatever you want to call it. In here, you'll see that it gives you a drive that it wants to back up to. Right now, that drive is disconnected, so it can't do a backup. But every day, it will back up the files on my computer until space is needed. And it will back them up from all of these folders that are listed on the left side here. Now, what do these files have in common? What do you see after the C:\\? See users, and Bruce T. Now, what is users and Bruce T?
Bruce D is your name.
Right, Bruce T. This is my profile.
Profile. There you go.
So it's going to back up everything in my profile. So whatever user is logged on, if you do a backup using file history, it's going to back up your profile. Now let's say you have another user that logs onto this computer, and you log on as you, and you do a backup on your computer using file history. Is it going to back up their profile? No. It's only going to back up the profile of the user that's logged on to the computer. But here's a little trick, folks. If you click add a folder, you can actually add a folder from anyone's profile. So you as a user, if you're an administrator and you have permissions to those folders, you can back up any other user's profile on there, on your computer. I don't have a lot of users on here. I don't think Merck has anything in it. No, there's nothing in there. But you can go to a different profile, and you can add different folders and things like that to your profile. And that way you can back up other people's stuff at the same time. So if you have another user that you want to back up their documents or their pictures and things like that, you can go into the file history backup, and you can add their folder to your list of files that get backed up. And if you have permissions to get to those, like if you are an administrator on your computer, you can back those up. Maybe we should do a class in backups and preventing disasters. Maybe disaster recovery might be a good topic for next week's class. So maybe we'll talk about disaster recovery next time. We talk about that in the Outlaws, but I think it's kind of sketchy the way we cover it. We never really do a complete picture. I think it leaves people confused. So maybe next week we'll do disaster recovery, where we'll talk about the different ways you can use online services as well as local services to back up your computer. But basically, you can choose any folder. So if I went into public here, and if it lets me go there, let's go back to public, and I go to the public desktop. There's nothing in there, but if I choose that folder, it will add that folder to my list. Okay, so it will get backed up the next time file history runs. Now, file history can be saved on those little 1 terabyte or 5 terabyte external drives that you could buy, or you can save it onto a flash drive. Flash drive needs to be fairly large, at least 32 gigs or larger. The more stuff you want to have on there, the larger flash drive you're going to have. But it's probably a lot more economical to back them up on one of those 1 terabyte or 5 terabyte external USB drives that you can buy for that purpose. So that's, the problem is that if you plug that drive in and you leave it plugged in, if your computer gets hit by ransomware, you could be a victim of having your backups destroyed as well as your files on your disk. So you need to be careful. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You need to make a habit of backing up your system so you become kind of an expert at it, so at least you don't have to repeat the work over and over and over again. Okay, let's take a minute break here. If anyone needs to leave, we'll start again in a minute or two.